The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's the 10th of November 2025, and today we have a very special show. We are going to be talking with my dear friend, Zen Honeycutt. Welcome to the show, Zen. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Polly, and thank you to the entire team at CHD. I really appreciate you, all of you. Thank you.
Well, you know, our viewers have been pouring out love to you ever since we got the news of the tragic death of your son, Ben. And it's really brave of you to talk about it, but we feel it's important, right, that we talk about Ben.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, the overwhelming support from the community was so extraordinary. I was opening up cards every day for a month and a half or so, it seemed like. People sent me art, gift baskets, of course, funds to help pay for his funeral, which was insanely expensive. It's a whole other racket. There should be a show just exposing the funeral industry of how expensive it is. And the testing that we got done on his body to determine the toxins that were in his body, that was all paid for by support from people like from Moms Across America and Children's Health Defense and the High Wire audience. I mean, people were truly amazing in this community. Thank you so much to everybody.
Well, Zen, it's because everybody loved you so much with all the work that you've done and your beautiful family. So let's talk about Ben. You say, the toxins in his body. Can you talk us through what you found and what happened?
Yeah, well, I have to back up a little bit before I say exactly what toxins were in his body because I need to express how unlikely it was. Ben was the reason why I started Moms Across America. He was the reason when we didn't pass the Prop 37 GMO labeling in California. I was in the van afterwards crying because GMO labeling didn't pass. I thought it was absurd and perhaps the election had been rigged. And Ben was 9 years old at the time, and he said, well, Mom, even Star Wars took 6 episodes. And I said, yeah, and we had Yoda. I mean, they had Yoda. They had a magical being. And he had the wisdom to see that sometimes it takes a new episode. Sometimes it takes more time than what we would like to get something done. So I thought maybe it's time to take on a new episode, and I would take on leadership. I had passed out flyers for Prop 37, but I hadn't taken on leadership. So I took on leadership, and I thought of the idea of starting Moms Across America, marching in parades and raising awareness about GMOs and eventually glyphosate. And Ben was right there alongside me. If you see the picture on our website, Facebook, the little boy that's next to me in the parade, that's Ben at 9 years old. And he was there with me the whole time. And we watched, GMO OMG together and genetic roulette and King Corn, and we learned about the food supply together. And he learned that he wanted to only eat organic food. And so for 10 years, he ate only organic food. And when I say that, people might think, oh, he was a kid. He probably snuck a donut at church or, ate McDonald's with his friends. No, this kid didn't even want to go to the bathroom at McDonald's, right? If he had to go to McDonald's for Cub Scouts, he drank water. If we went out as a family to a restaurant, he brought his own food or he drank water. That was it. And the only thing that he didn't eat that wasn't organic was Chipotle because they advertised, non-GMO and organic, and we tested them and they had the lowest amount of pesticides. And that Chipotle he ate maybe once a month or something like that, right? It was not a frequent thing. So the likelihood of finding toxins in his body was extremely low. But unfortunately, Polly, and I know this is such bad news for the audience, we found high levels of heavy metals in his body. And that includes lead, cadmium, aluminum. Aluminum wasn't too high, but it was probably lower because he drank Fiji water every day for like a year, and Fiji water takes the aluminum out of the body. He was almost fully vaccinated, so I do expect that the aluminum in his body was much higher and that did contribute to his mental illness. He was on the spectrum. His doctor said he basically had ADHD. He was kind of, it seemed like a little Aspergery, like very, very smart in particular areas and socially, maybe not up to, doing some things socially. But he was an incredibly intelligent, critical thinking young man, very capable. And the heavy metals that we found in his body, one of them was a particular concern. It was called thallium, Thallium, and it's commonly found in leafy greens, particularly kale. And Ben ate a giant bowl of leafy greens every day because he had chosen at 14 years old to become a vegan, although he wouldn't have called himself a vegan. He called himself a whole food, plant-based diet advocate. And so that means, though, he didn't eat any animal products for 7 years. And he ate a giant bowl of leafy greens every day. And we have since gotten the kale brand tested that he ate, and it was indeed very high in thallium. And thallium causes DNA breakage and mental illness. So we have a great concern about people who are eating high levels of kale and could be developing depression because of that. It's just not something that the government tests for. It's not something that the vegan community talks about. This could be one of the major reasons why he got mental illness. He also had high levels of mycotoxins, and mycotoxins are commonly found in beans and grains. They're the byproduct of molds. And surprise, surprise, glyphosate contributes to the growth of these molds and mycotoxins. Glyphosate at very low levels, according to Ag Advisory, Michael McNeil of Ag Advisory says that even drift levels of glyphosate can cause the growth of aspergillus and fusarium, like increase these molds by 15 times in crops where they are exposed to glyphosate. And the byproduct of fusarium and aspergillus are mycotoxins like ochratoxins, aflatoxins, and xenolone. And these are mycotoxins that also contribute to mental illness and depression. And I believe this is why, there's been a huge surge of people who are on the keto and carnivore diet. Well, what are they doing when they go to keto or carnivore? They're avoiding grains. They're avoiding beans. Why do they feel better when they avoid grains and beans? I think it's because of the mycotoxins. So this is just my theory, but I think it's something that needs to be investigated. And I think it's something also that vegans who consume large quantities of beans and grains need to be aware of. Ben consumed 2 cans of beans every day. And predominantly, these black beans are from China. And China is not very well known for regulatory, scrutiny regarding chemicals. And I think that's why Ben also had high levels of DDT. DDT has been banned for over 30 years. My son had a pesticide that is considered extremely harmful in his body, and we don't know, he ate organic for 10 years. So we don't know where that came from, but we are suspicious of the black beans that he ate every day, and the fact that they most likely came from China, where they don't, they don't regulate as well there. He also had very low levels of cholesterol because he was a vegan, and cholesterol can contribute to the lack of production of testosterone and mood imbalance and depression. And this is why there are many people out there that say that the vegan diet can contribute to depression. So I'm not here to say that nobody should eat a vegan diet. I'm just saying that if you do that, you must be aware to get testing for your levels of cholesterol, your hormones, your heavy metals, your mycotoxins, because otherwise you're flying blind on your health journey. You're assuming that you're healthier, and you absolutely might not be, especially also your genetic testing, your DNA. Ben, we didn't find out until a year before Ben passed, when he was showing signs of some depression, that he doesn't absorb choline well through plants. And so he really had to be eating eggs. That's the other source of choline. And so he really never should have been a vegan in the first place, ever. If we had known his genetics, he should not have been a vegan. And so he did start eating eggs within that past year. And it was only up until 4 months before when he started to eat meat. But I don't think that that was a long enough time. And the depression eventually overtook him, and he killed himself about 3 months ago now. And it was a
Yeah,
total shock.
yeah, total shock. Horrific. Ben was a lovely man. I got a couple of questions. The organic kale he was eating. Now, people watching him just gonna be like, sorry, organic. Organic means that we don't have pesticides and stuff. Can you talk about the fact that organic, sadly, food is
Well, yes, it's supposed to mean that they don't have pesticides, but nobody's testing or doing anything about heavy metals, Polly. That's my point. Heavy metals and mycotoxins, which were found in my son, are not being regulated that means tested for or limited, regulated in any way by the federal government or by the organic industry. This is something that's being vastly overlooked, is the levels of heavy metals in our food supply. The FDA only regulates for heavy metals in baby food, applesauce, and some candy, and it's only lead. They're not checking for aluminum. The aluminum levels from our testing that you've seen on Moms Across America, we have exposed aluminum levels of 40,000 parts per billion in baby formula, of thousands of parts per billion in Girl Scout cookies and in gluten-free food and in various foods. So the aluminum we're extremely concerned about. We don't know where that's coming from either. That could be geoengineering. It could be anti-caking agents. It could be the packaging. It could be, the cans. We don't know. But there are toxic metals like aluminum and heavy metals like lead and arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and also thallium that are not being regulated for at all. So this is why we're saying if the government's not going to regulate it, and the food manufacturers are not going to regulate it, then the last resort is us. We need to do testing on our bodies. We need to own our data, right? We need to know what's in our bodies, our children's bodies, and then we need to make health decisions from there. One of my children has such a high level of iron that the doctor says he should go give blood to lower the level of iron in his body. Another one of my children has such a low level of iron that, like myself, we're borderline anemic. It's just our body just doesn't process and absorb iron in, the way that it could or should maybe. And so this the other thing about Ben. He had the MTFHR gene variant, which made his and several other variants, which made it difficult for him to detox. So, for instance, we would go into a Sephora at downtown Disney, and his eyes would just start tearing. His body would react to chemicals in a way that other people's perhaps wouldn't. So it's possible, even though he was in the 95th percentile and above for thallium and mycotoxins and DDT, it's possible that other people would detox those chemicals and get them out of their body, right? They wouldn't be good for them, for anybody. Those levels aren't good for anybody, but other people might be able to process those toxins. But Ben couldn't. His body was different. There's a document out by Kaiser Permanente that says that Chinese women, and I'm half Chinese, about 30% of us have the gene MTFHR gene variant that could make it more difficult to detox. But there are several gene variants. People should know that. It's not just the MTFHR. And so everybody, I believe, should get their testing done to find out what their levels are. And that's why we started a new total transparency toxin testing program on Moms Across America in partnership with a licensed nutritionist, Kendall McIntosh, who I personally experienced a enormous amount of generosity when my son passed. I asked her to take a look at my son's records, and I had dozens of tests done by a functional medicine doctor, Dr. Michael Carter. We had the testing done with him, but I asked her to take a look at it because I wanted a nutritional perspective. And I think that's another aspect that's missing out of our healthcare today, is looking at our medical records with a nutritionist who can then guide you on how to eat. And the perspective she gave me, and plus she spent like 6 days looking at his records. It was very generous. I eventually did pay her for a full consultation because her time is valuable, so I paid her. But I partnered with her because of her knowledge and generosity and commitment to our children. And I strongly urge everybody to get the testing done that's recommended on that page.
Then what diet do you recommend, having been through all of this with all your knowledge? How should we eat?
That's a really good question. And I believe that a varied, balanced diet still is the best thing. But I can't say that. No one can say what diet you should eat, Polly, because we don't know your genetics, right? If you got your genetic testing done, you would be able to see. For instance, Ben and I, no good with coffee. It just does not do well with us. It jacks up our metabolism and has us be like sort of freaked out and edgy. And but my ex-husband, he could have 6 cups of coffee and sleep like a baby, right? Everybody's genetics are different. So I would just consider, urge you to get your testing done to see. Again, I don't absorb choline well through plants. I didn't eat eggs for a long time because I read the medical medium books, and he said, eating eggs can contribute to Epstein-Barr. And I had on and off Epstein-Barr. And so I stopped eating eggs for a while, and I noticed, coincidentally, that my memory just was really tanking. So once I learned that I don't absorb choline well through plants and I really should eat eggs, I started eating eggs again. And my memory it seems to me, much better. Now, grief, whole nother story. My grief really impacts your memory. So please forgive me if I ever see you, anybody, and I don't thank you for perhaps a very generous donation that you gave to the Give, Send, Go or something like that, right? If I don't remember, I'm so sorry, but grief really does a job on your memory. But besides that, I've learned I should be eating eggs to get choline, and so that affects my diet, and everybody should be eating. I believe I would ask people to follow the Weston A. Price Foundation diet as much as possible, to look at that. Eating pasture raised meats and animal products, I believe, are very important for the brain. Especially, we need good fats for the brain to function properly. And Ben had very low levels of cholesterol and the things that help your body to think properly. And the problem is that when you're not thinking properly, you don't know that you're not thinking properly, right? When you have mental illness, you usually don't know. So that's why I urge people to get tested, because then you will know at least what's going on in your body. You may not know how you're thinking, but you'll know what is impacting how you're thinking and how your behavior is, right? Why your behavior might be different. And then also the relief is you learn, okay, this is what's going on in my body. That means there's not really anything wrong with me, right? If somebody's feeling depressed, you're not worthy. You're not lovable. You are worthy. You are lovable. You just may have low vitamin D or low iron, or, you know what I mean? Low B12. It may just be like the bicycle chain is off the gears on the bike. You're not a broken bicycle, like faulty, not worthy, right? Not lovable. It's not you. It's something going on chemically in your body. And we need to find out what it is. We need to get the testing done and go from there, start from there. And I have to say, I took out college fund money for my kids because we don't even have medical insurance. And medical insurance doesn't cover a lot of this testing anyway. We took out college fund money to get this testing done because I believe that health has to come first. And most kids aren't even going to go to college if they aren't mentally fit, right? So it really has to come first, in my opinion.
I don't know if you can answer this question, but for parents watching now, how do you detect depression in your child? What are the warning signs of mental illness, depression that you said that Ben had before he passed?
Yeah, yeah. Well, as a mom, things starts to shift. They start to retreat. Ben stopped going to church. He was going to a church all by himself. He had wanted community and he wanted to meet people. And after a little while, he stopped going to church. He stopped running. He had been a cross country runner. He was running every day practically. He had been working out downstairs in the basement and, punching like a punching bag, and he had been going to Muay Thai, and he stopped doing those things. And he applied for a job and he didn't get it, so that was depressing to him. He just sort of started to retreat in his purpose. He didn't like it, and we did discuss often that he didn't feel like he could make enough money to provide for a family. Everything was so expensive. And so just listening to your child, how do they see the world? What do they see for themselves for the future? Ben was really not hopeful about what his future was going to look like. We tried to give him hope. We tried to encourage him. We tried to require that he go out and do things right, but he was very resistant. And Ben taught me that there's 5 things that you need for survival in this world. One is air, clearly that's the first one, and then water, food, shelter, and the last one is hope. And the fact is that Ben lost hope because of what's going on in the world, and also I believe because the toxins in his body made him less capable of being able to cope with what is going on in the world.
Dan, how are your other boys? How's Bodhi, our darling Bodhi? How are they coping? How are you all coping?
Yeah, so well, thank God that the community really came together, and my ex-husband came back and is with us now to be around the boys and be supportive. So he really stepped up in leadership. And Bodhi's dealing with it in his own way, but he's back with us. And he likes to remember the good times with Ben and the times that they laughed together. And they laughed together so much. They were all best friends up until, the past year or so when Ben got depressed. They did have some, a few more arguments, but before the last year or so, I could have counted arguments that they all had on one hand. I mean, they hardly ever argued. They had so much fun and played together. And it's just unbelievable to me that this has happened. I used to hear about other people, this type of thing happening to them, and I just said, oh my God, I would just die. If one of my sons died, I would die. But you don't. You don't just die, you keep living. So you have to do the best you can with what's there. And the fact is I do have 2 more boys, and they're beautiful, and I love them so much, and thank God I have them. And Bodhi is doing the best he can. Bronson is probably doing better in his life than he ever has before. He has wonderful friends and a good job at the best restaurant in town, and he's doing great in school, and he has a car he loves, and he even has a girlfriend. So, he's really connected with his community. So that is the number one thing too that I want people to consider is the best thing you can do with your child is to listen to them. Find out what's going on with them, but not just in their mind, right, and their hearts, but in their body. So then get the testing, listen to them, talk to them, please, 20 minutes a day. Give them your undivided attention, just 20 minutes, and tell them you're going to do that, and carve time out for that. And then also spend the probably 20 minutes just to get the testing done, right? The genetic swab, the cheek swab, the testing that you get done with Kendall, and then make sure to carve out time together to do fun things and love on each other and create memories together, because you just never know how much time you have. You just don't know.
No, you don't know, Zen. Our heart aches for you. I mean, it's just, I can't imagine, just like you said before. I mean, there are no words, but just, I hope you feel the love around the world, because there's so much love for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And um, I've learned more in the past, couple months from this, I think in the past 10 years. And I think the other thing I want to say to people is that when you are grieving, you have to be present to your feelings, right? Because you're just overwhelmed with feelings all the time. So you have to be present to them. And what it's taught me is self-care and I used to be so focused just on fixing the outside world, right? And I've realized that you really, as within, so without, that whole phrase, the way that we transform the outside world is to transform ourselves. So when you get present to self-care and you start to do things like sort out your childhood wounds, look at, your ancestral background, whatever it is you need to do, sit and be with God and listen to God. When you do that and you transform yourselves, you transform the rest of the world, because how you look at the world alters and how you interact with the world alters. And other people cannot disrupt your peace as much. When you're more honest with yourself about the self-care that you need, then the things in the outside world that don't correlate with what you need, they go away. They drift away, and then you are, re-empowered in owning your peace. So I really encourage everybody to spend more time on self-care, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share about this. There's probably things I've forgotten to say, but I know that Ben would have wanted me to tell the truth, and I'm going to say, I know some people think this might be a little crazy, but I had a medium come to me a little bit after he passed, and I didn't pay her. She was just a friend of a friend, and he said that he was going to line things up for me, and I was going to be able to share this information about the toxins in his body. And he said a DNA breakage and a contaminant and synthetic chemical and all of that. And he was going to line things up for me, and I was going to share it. It was going to make a difference for a lot of people, especially babies. And so when we got this idea about this act, this bill to expand newborn genetic testing to include MTFHR and genetic testing and to include toxins, I knew that that's what, this is what God wants me to do, what Ben wants me to do. We want people to be able to get the genetic information, private. They own their data, right? But it's up to them. They have that opportunity at birth to get their genetic testing done and to know if their child has these MTFHR genes or the other gene variants that impair their ability to detox. They probably shouldn't get vaccinated. They probably should not vaccinate their baby on the first day of life with a bunch of aluminum in that vaccine, right? Wouldn't you agree, Polly? That probably wouldn't be a great idea.
I'm someone who says it's not a great idea to vaccinate at all.
Yeah.
Then, so they go to mumsacrossamerica.com. You have other petitions. You have the Banza Pasta petition as well, correct?
Yes, we have a lot of petitions there. We have one to the EPA right now. We also have a new arm that I want to share. It's the Moms Across America movement. You saw a little bit about that, and that is a legislative arm, and we're championing policy and public servants who put children health, safety, and America's future first. So that's where, we'll be presenting this bill and looking for a sponsor for that bill and other bills, the food dye bills that are out right now, all different kinds of MAHA bills. There's over 30 states now that have different MAHA related bills. So go you advocates out there who are working hard to make our food safer. I so appreciate you. And we at the Moms Across America movement, the tagline is "Yes, ma'am." We'll be featuring those bills. We're growing our team. We're looking for funding to do that. And we're going to be featuring candidates that are going to be running for office for midterm elections. We want to get MAHA candidates in office that will represent MAHA issues and, Make America Healthy Again issues and the Moms Across America Yes Ma'am platform issues. And so we urge you to become members, $30 a month, and you'll be a part of the special Moms Connect calls that will focus on the legislative issues. So we're saying for $1 a day, you get to have a say of what we moms bring to the Hill. And what we've been told is that legislators are more afraid of moms than any other grassroots group out there. So we urge people to use their power to support the moms. Even if you're not a mom, support the moms to speak up on your behalf. And we thank you so much for your donations and your time and your partnership.
Well, Zen, thank you for speaking so brilliantly about Ben. And we'll never forget Ben. And we owe a lot to Ben for Mums Across America and all the work that you're doing. So we're always going to remember him. And just thank you again for everything that you do and being on here and talking so openly. I know you're being showered in love by our people, and I'm sure they can contact you through Mums Across America as well if they want to shower you in more love. But
Thank you, Polly. Thank you so much. I really feel your love, and I don't know if I would have made it through it with especially my girlfriends. I appreciate everybody so much. Thank you.
We all love you, Zen. Thank you for being on this morning.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's Zen from Moms Across America, and I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who has donated to support my family during this unimaginably difficult time. And I just can't express to you how much it means to me that the community has come together to pay for my son's funeral expenses. Ben was the reason why I started Moms Across America, and he's the reason why I will continue on, and his life will not be in vain, and I will turn this pain into purpose. And my amazing team that is working day and night right now will support that. And I just can't thank all of you enough for the support that you have given me. We'll be able to put him to rest in a forest. It's going to be a green burial, and he loved the forest. And he loved telling the truth. He was a truth seeker. And so we're going to continue to do that at Moms Across America. And his life will support the wellness of other people. So my whole family thanks you with our whole hearts. And you give us hope that humanity is good, and we will go on. I'm going to rest a little first, though. So you may not see a lot of me, but I will be back. Love you all. Thank you so much.
Hello, CHD. I'm Heather Ray, and this is Vaccine of the Week. Every week, we break down a vaccine packaging insert from the CDC immunization schedule. We examine the disease it's intended to prevent and discuss the vaccine itself. We also touch on some things that you, as a parent, might want to know. Today, we're talking about the MMRV vaccine ProQuad. Now, the ProQuad vaccine is intended to protect against 4 separate infections: measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella zoster virus, also known as chickenpox. The first dose of the ProQuad vaccine is typically given when a child is between 12 and 15 months old. The second dose is given when a child is between 4 and 6 years old. This is the same time frame as the MMR vaccine, and it's usually given as the MMR plus the varicella vaccine, or the MMRV. When we look at the dosing information, we can see that every infant and child is recommended to receive a 0.5 milliliter dose of ProQuad between the ages of 12 and 15 months old, and again between 4 and 6 years old. Now, this isn't weight dependent like many prescription or over-the-counter medications. So a 1-year-old infant who weighs, say, 21 pounds is given the same dose of ProQuad as a 6-year-old who weighs 50 pounds. So let's talk about the vaccine. ProQuad is manufactured by Merck. It's approved for children 12 months of age to 12 years old. It was initially approved in the United States in 2005, and it's the only MMRV vaccine approved in the U.S. intended to protect against measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella zoster infections. Like the MMR and varicella vaccines that are recommended by the CDC, children may receive ProQuad or one of the MMR vaccines, MMR2 or Priorix, and the single antigen varicella vaccine, Varivax. Very recently, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, changed the recommendation on children receiving ProQuad due to the increase in febrile seizures and measles-like rash with the administration of ProQuad versus administering the MMR vaccine and the varicella vaccine separately. As of October 6, 2025, the CDC now recommends that children under 4 years old receive the MMR vaccine and the varicella vaccine separately. However, the American Academy of Pediatrics still continues to recommend the ProQuad MMRV vaccine for children under 4. The AAP has broken away from federal ACIP guidelines and issued its own vaccine recommendations, and many children today are still receiving ProQuad. This does not mean that giving your infant the MMR vaccine and varicella vaccine is entirely safe, so please do your own research. MMR2 and Preorix are discussed in previous episodes of Vaccine of the Week, so if you're interested in learning more about either of those vaccines, check out those episodes on Vaccine of the Week on CHD TV. We're also going to discuss Varivax on a future show. ProQuad is a quadrivalent live virus vaccine, meaning it contains 4 separate live viruses in a single dose. As we've discussed in the previous MMR vaccine episodes, live virus vaccines are created from a weakened or attenuated version of the virus to simulate an immune response in the body. ProQuad is composed of a weakened or attenuated form of the measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella zoster viruses. Please keep in mind that even though live virus vaccines are created with attenuated or weakened strain of the virus, if the person receives a live virus vaccine and has an undiagnosed immune deficiency, they can be at risk of becoming really sick, and in some cases it can be fatal. And live virus vaccines can shed the vaccine virus. We're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show. So now let's talk about infections that the vaccine is intended to prevent and protect against. All 4 of these viral infections are contagious. They can be transmitted through respiratory droplets, like through a cough or a sneeze, or even direct contact, for instance, like the fluid from a chickenpox blister. All of these infections are generally mild, and they're typically experienced during childhood. Let's talk a little bit about measles. There's been a lot in the media this year about measles, so let's talk about the facts and clear up a few misconceptions. Although small outbreaks happen, measles really is rare in the United States. And since September 20th, 2025, there have been less than 2,100 cases of measles that have occurred since 2020. Since 2015, there have only been 4 measles-related deaths in the United States. And when we talk about these measles-related deaths, it's important that we understand the details behind this that the media and the CDC don't broadcast. The first measles-related death was in 2015 when a 20-year-old woman experienced several complications and comorbidities due to immunosuppressing drugs. She contracted the measles virus and died of pneumonia, but not of measles. The next 3 deaths happened this past spring, but the information that we have from the CDC and the media is incomplete and it's inaccurate. On February 26, 2025, a little girl who had almost completely recovered from the measles passed away at Children's Covenant Hospital in Lubbock, Texas. Just a few days prior, she sought medical care from the hospital's emergency room and was diagnosed with community-acquired pneumonia. During her stay at Children's Covenant Hospital, there were some grave and preventable errors that were made by the doctors. She was given inappropriate antibiotics against the standard of care for the type of pneumonia she had. This little girl died due to hospital error and not the measles. If you'd like the full story on this, please check out the CHD TV episode linked to this video. On March 6, 2025, an adult passed away at his home in New Mexico. The cause of death hasn't been determined, and the only way that we know this person had measles is because PCR tests were done during the autopsy after they passed away. Most likely, this person passed away with measles and not due to measles. Sadly, another little girl passed away on April 4th, 2025 at University Medical Center in Lubbock, Texas. Once again, in the same community, the hospital staff made grave errors in this young child's care that ultimately cost her her life. The media and the CDC stated that she died of measles, but she did not. She died of hospital error. We also feature the story on CHD TV, and the video is in the show notes. So the symptoms of measles infection usually appear 10 days to 2 weeks after being exposed to the virus. They're typically cold-like symptoms: runny nose, cough, sore throat, mild fever, and even conjunctivitis or pink eye. A rash of small bumps clustered together often appears on the face, and it spreads to the torso and the extremities. The rash can become a little itchy, and kids who contract measles usually feel unwell for less than a week. Healthy kids and adults typically fully recover from measles without incident or any complications. In extremely rare cases, complications of measles may occur. Complications can include vomiting, diarrhea, encephalitis, and complications in pregnancy. When we look at mumps, we see that mumps is a viral infection where the parotoid or salivary glands become swollen and tender. Mumps are fairly uncommon in the US, and there's been less than 2,400 confirmed cases in the country since 2020. Most of these cases are in young adults and vaccinated individuals. Symptoms of the mumps are much like the flu. Symptoms usually show 2 to 3 weeks after exposure, and they're headache, fever, fatigue, decreased appetite, swollen salivary glands. And oftentimes children may experience very mild symptoms or none at all. In rare cases, complications of mumps may include encephalitis, meningitis, and temporary hearing loss. Rare complications in adolescents after puberty and adults may also include temporarily swollen ovaries and testicles, and an increased risk of miscarriage if a woman contracts the illness within the first 3 months of pregnancy. Rubella, also known as German measles or the 3-day measles, is also a mild viral infection. Before 1959, most children in the US naturally contracted it. It's now extremely rare in the US, with fewer than 10 reported cases in the country annually. Rubella usually lasts for an average of 3 days and is less infectious and severe than regular measles. And it doesn't exist in many countries. Symptoms are much like the regular measles: a mild fever, headache, stuffy nose, and a fine pink rash that starts on the face and it spreads to the rest of the body. Complications are rare, but it can cause severe medical conditions in babies if the mother becomes infected during pregnancy. This disease is called congenital rubella syndrome, or CRS, and the complications are most severe in babies whose mother was infected in the first trimester. Varicella zoster virus, or chickenpox, is the 4th viral infection that ProQuad is intended to prevent. Like the other 3 infections, chickenpox is a self-limiting, generally mild infection. Until the mid-90s, 90% of kids in the US typically contracted it by the time they were 15 years old. And symptoms usually show up about a week and a half to 3 weeks after a child's been exposed to the virus. A rash of small, fluid-filled bumps typically appears all over the body, and it lasts about 5 to 10 days. Flu-like symptoms are very common. So kids may have a fever, they may have loss of appetite, fatigue, or generally just feeling unwell. Medical attention for chickenpox is rarely needed, and complications from the virus are very rare. But complications may include pneumonia, bacterial infection, and encephalitis. Pregnant women and infants under a year old and those who are immunocompromised are at a higher risk. So the primary reason we vaccinate our children or ourselves is to prevent the infection and the transmission of diseases, right? Well, if we look at section 12.1 in the packaging insert of ProQuad, it states, the duration of protection from measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella infections after vaccination with ProQuad is unknown. And there's many peer-reviewed scientific studies that suggest ProQuad's efficacy wanes over time. For instance, in 2007, the CDC found that about 35% of 7-year-olds and 60% of 15-year-olds who received the MMR vaccine were susceptible to subclinical or asymptomatic infection with the measles virus. So even though you feel fine, you can still spread this infection to others. By about the age of 25, about 33% of vaccinated adults are susceptible to clinical infection. And this is where you're infected with the virus and you show symptoms or noticeable signs of the illness that typically make you feel sick. And with that, you may need to seek medical care. As a result of waning immunity from the vaccine, nearly 50% of school-age children and over 60% of adults are susceptible to measles infection. And they can spread it to others even if they don't have symptoms themselves. Vaccine failure rates and breakthrough infections for measles, mumps, and chickenpox are common in highly vaccinated areas. Breakthrough infections coupled with waning efficacy can cause outbreaks in highly vaccinated populations, like high schools and universities. We've even seen this happen at Disneyland in 2014 and 2015. And breakthrough infections can be very serious, causing hospitalization or death. So let's talk about the safety of ProQuad now. Is it safe? Is it safe to give to your children? We can look at Section 5 at the warnings and precautions. One of the warnings in the packaging insert states that ProQuad is associated with a higher rate of febrile seizures than the MMR vaccine and the varicella vaccine given separately. When looking at the data, children who were given ProQuad had twice the rate of febrile seizures than kids who were given the MMR and varicella vaccine separately. That means that ProQuad would be responsible for febrile seizures occurring in about 1 in every 320 kids who receive the vaccine, and in about 11,400 children under 18 months of age in the US each year. So a few more warnings and precautions that the packaging insert states is hypersensitivity to eggs, to include anaphylactic reaction, hives, shock, swelling of the mouth or throat, thrombocytopenia, which is a low blood platelet count, children who are HIV positive, and anyone who has a family history of immunodeficiency. Now, when we look at Section 5.6, it also mentions the risk of a vaccine virus transmission. Kids vaccinated with the ProQuad vaccine can shed the vaccine RNA for up to 29 days. They can shed it through their fecal matter, through their urine, and through respiratory droplets. So it's very easy to transmit the vaccine RNA when you're changing a child's diaper, when they're toilet training, or when they sneeze or cough. The rubella vaccine virus has also been shown to be transmitted through breast milk. And the chickenpox vaccine RNA can also be transmitted through the skin lesions. So if a child has chickenpox and maybe they scratch the bumps on their arm and the fluid-filled blisters pop and they hold your hand, you can contract the virus. If a child receives ProQuad, they can shed the vaccine RNA of all 4 viruses it's intended to protect against for up to a month. And it can make others sick with the same symptoms seen in wild-type measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox. This can be extremely dangerous for individuals who are high risk, like people who are immunocompromised, pregnant women who haven't had chickenpox, newborn infants whose mothers haven't had chickenpox, and all newborns born before 28 weeks of gestation. With that, do you think that every time a pediatrician, public health nurse, RN, or LPN administers ProQuad, they inform the parent or caregiver of the risks to people the child may come in contact with over the next month? How many pregnant mothers take their child in for an MMRV shot and are exposed to these vaccine viruses without even knowing this information? What about the children who receive the MMRV vaccine and go to daycare or school and expose pregnant teachers or kids and adults who are immunocompromised? There are countless scenarios where high-risk infants, children, and adults are unknowingly being exposed to the vaccine measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella viruses. This is not only a health risk to the child who receives the vaccine, but it's also a health risk to others who are exposed to that child during the shedding period. Section 5 also states the risk of using salicylates and salicylate-containing products after administering ProQuad. The vaccine packaging insert specifically states, avoid the use of salicylates, which is aspirin, or salicylate-containing products in children and adolescents 12 months through 12 years of age for 6 weeks following vaccination with ProQuad due to the association of Reye's syndrome with salicylate therapy and wild-type varicella infection. So common over-the-counter synthetic salicylates or salicylate-containing products can include aspirin and baby aspirin, Pepto-Bismol, Alka-Seltzer. It's also found in shampoos and conditioners and sunscreen. It's also used as a preservative, and it's in food coloring, food flavorings, and even in toothpaste. So let me ask you this. How many children do you think receive medication containing aspirin, use shampoo, sunscreen, toothpaste, or eat foods containing salicylates within 6 weeks after getting the MMRV vaccine? It really makes you wonder if nurses and pediatricians who administer ProQuad inform parents and caregivers of this, or if they're unaware of this warning themselves. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Tylenol after vaccination. The FDA recently issued a warning regarding the risks associated with Tylenol. While the administration mostly focused on Tylenol during pregnancy use, there are also risks that are especially increased after vaccination in infants and toddlers. So when we look at the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, or VAERS, we can look and see how many VAERS reports there are for the MMRV vaccine. Now, remember that when we talk about VAERS, it's important to keep in mind that VAERS may be only capturing 1 to 10% of all vaccine adverse events. That's a tiny percentage of the adverse events that people are actually experiencing. ProQuad and other MMRV vaccines are also associated with numerous serious adverse events, chronic illnesses, and death in infants and children. When we look at the clinical trial information on the packaging insert, it shows a much higher incidence of fever and measles-like rash in toddlers from 12 to 23 months old than MMR2 and Veravax taken separately, and a much higher incidence of most reported adverse reactions in the first dose than the second dose. Children in the clinical trials were only followed for 42 days. When tested concomitantly and separately against the pneumococcal 7-valent conjugate vaccine, ProQuad given by itself and with the pneumococcal 7-valent vaccine had much higher incidences of fever, measles-like rash, and upper respiratory infections than the pneumococcal 7-valent vaccine given alone. In this trial, kids were only followed for 28 days. So when we look at the adverse events in the clinical trials, we can see that we had measles, rubella, chickenpox-like rash, and mumps-like illnesses reported. There were high fevers, and they also reported herpes zoster in children. There were also adverse events in the post-marketing experience. Now keep in mind that the post-marketing experience is the adverse reactions that are reported after the vaccine is released to market. This is the result of the experiment the vaccine manufacturers do on you, because 28 days or 42 days just isn't enough time to truly understand any short or long-term health outcomes related to the ProQuad vaccine. So here's just a few of those adverse reactions that happened after ProQuad was released to market. Respiratory infections, including influenza, bronchitis, and pneumonia, measles, atypical measles, vaccine varicella, and herpes zoster, encephalitis and meningitis, thrombocytopenia, aplastic and regular anemia, anaphylaxis, anaphylactoid reactions and facial swelling, Guillain-Barré syndrome, Bell's palsy, and ataxia, which is a disorder that affects the balance and makes it really hard to walk. They had convulsions, seizures, and afebrile seizures, necrotizing retinitis, which is an eye infection that causes the retina to die, and it can cause vision loss, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and transverse myelitis, which are associated with conditions like multiple sclerosis and other autoimmune diseases. We also had arthritis and syncope and several more. Now remember that these are very serious conditions that can be permanent, and many of these are life-altering and potentially fatal. As with all vaccines, the packaging insert states that ProQuad has not been evaluated for carcinogenic or mutagenic potential or for impairment of fertility. So we don't know if the vaccine can cause cancer, if it can cause genetic mutations, or if it impacts fertility in our children. So now let's talk about the ingredients in the ProQuad vaccine. The measles vaccine virus live, an attenuated or weakened line of the measles virus derived from the Enders attenuated Edmundston strain and propagated in chick embryo cell culture. The mumps virus vaccine live, the Gerald Lynn B-level strain of mumps virus propagated in chick embryo cell culture. The chick embryo cell culture are cells derived from chicken embryos, and these can be connective tissue cells, skin cells, neural tissue cells, or organ cells of the embryonic chickens. Rubella virus vaccine live, the Wistar RA27/3 strain of live attenuated rubella virus propagated in WI-38 human diploid lung fibroblasts. The rubella live virus vaccine is made from aborted fetal cells. The Wistar RA27/3 strain of live attenuated rubella virus is from a baby aborted during the second trimester, whose mother contracted rubella and the baby had congenital rubella syndrome in the womb. It also contains varicella virus vaccine live, the Oka Merck strain of varicella zoster virus propagated in MRC-5 cells. The MRC5 human diploid cells in which the Wistar RA27/3 strain of live attenuated rubella virus was propagated were also made from aborted fetal cells. This is not the same baby who contracted congenital rubella syndrome in the womb, but a 14-week-old male who was aborted during the second trimester due to psychiatric reasons of his 27-year-old mother. His lung tissue cells were used to make the culture to propagate the Wistar RA27/3 strain of live attenuated rubella virus. Now, there's a few things that we want to consider anytime aborted fetal cell lines are used. Some people have religious and moral reservations regarding the use of aborted fetal cells injected into their body or the body of their child. When aborted fetal cells are used, we really don't know if the cell lines are passing oncogenic or cancerous material or not. So I'd just like to mention an important note from our senior research scientist, Dr. Carl Jablanowski. He found that ProQuad contains virtually the same ingredients as the MMR2 plus the Varivax vaccine. However, ProQuad has a much more infectable mumps and varicella component than the two separate MMR and varicella vaccines. In fact, it contains 60% more mumps component and 624% more varicella zoster component, or the chickenpox component, in the MMRV vaccine than in the MMR and varicella vaccines when they are given separately. Other ingredients include sucrose, which is table sugar, sorbitol, which is a sugar alcohol used in diet soda or sugar-free candies. It's also used as a stabilizer and a bulking agent. It can cause serious side effects like gastrointestinal issues, wheezing, tightness in the chest, trouble breathing, fast heartbeat, seizures, muscle pain, rash, and blurred eyesight. Hydrolyzed gelatin, and this is a gelatin derived from pigs that's used as a stabilizer to protect the live viruses against the effects of temperature. Things to consider regarding the gelatin are that some religious communities may be concerned about the use of gelatin in vaccines due to religious dietary laws. There's also been allergic reactions to the gelatin. It also contains urea, and in its natural form, urea is a natural metabolic byproduct of protein and nitrogen breakdown in the liver, and it's excreted through the kidneys into the urine. It's used as a stabilizer and regarded as safe and harmless in vaccines, but in vaccines, it's in its synthetic form. In its synthetic form, it's also used as a plant fertilizer. Urea has the highest nitrogen content of all solid nitrogenous fertilizers in common use. It's also commonly used in skin moisturizers and exfoliators like Cetaphil, CeraVe, Eucerin cream. ProQuad also contains sodium chloride, which is table salt, and sodium phosphate. Now, sodium phosphate is a category of salts using sodium and phosphate. It's also a stabilizer and emulsifier in processed cheese, and in instant pudding, also used as a fertilizer and a cleaning agent. Sodium phosphate comes with a harsh warning of permanent kidney damage and death, and it may cause other serious side effects like seizures, fainting, and irregular heartbeat. The vaccine also includes monosodium glutamate, which is MSG. That's a flavor additive and enhancer, especially in Asian cuisine. MSG symptom complex, while not an allergic reaction, may have symptoms such as headache, visual aura without headache, flushing, body tingling, fluttering heartbeats, chest pain or heaviness, and feeling sick to the stomach. The ProQuad vaccine also contains recombinant human albumin. This is a genetically engineered version of human albumin protein, where a human albumin gene, which is located on chromosome 4 of the human genome, is inserted into a host organism, typically a yeast-like Saccharomyces cerevisiae cell, where it grows this modified human albumin protein that is harvested and used as a stabilizer and prevents degradation of the vaccine during storage. It also includes sodium bicarbonate, which is basically baking soda, and potassium phosphate. Potassium phosphate in its natural state is an important electrolyte in the body. In vaccines, it's in its synthetic form, and it's used as a buffering agent. It's also used as a fertilizer. And as a side note, the FDA prohibits certified organic farms from using potassium phosphate. It's also used as water treatment, it's used in cleaning products, and for corrosion control. The side effects are blood in the urine, trouble breathing, seizures, irregular heartbeat, and many more. The vaccine also includes potassium chloride, which is used as a salt substitute and a preservative. It's used in prescription medication to treat low blood sodium, and it's also used in fertilizer. Serious side effects include irregular heartbeat and trouble breathing, and gastrointestinal injury causing stomach pain, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. ProQuad also contains neomycin. This is the active ingredient in Neosporin. It's an antibiotic used to treat or prevent certain bacterial infections. But in 2019, due to safety concerns and toxicity, neomycin sulfate was withdrawn from the market and it's no longer considered safe. The side effects from neomycin can include hearing loss, kidney damage or dysfunction, neuromuscular blockade, which can result in muscle paralysis, bowel blockage, balance issues, Parkinson's disease, and other side effects. And even though this drug has been discontinued in several forms, it's still used in the ProQuad vaccine. The ProQuad vaccine also includes bovine calf serum albumin. This is a protein that is isolated from the calf blood, and it's collected at the slaughterhouse. It's used to grow cells for vaccines. People may have ethical reservations regarding how the serum is collected, and there are allergic reactions to bovine calf serum, like hives, itching, and even anaphylaxis. It has also been shown to cause membranous nephropathy in early childhood. This is a progressive kidney disease that can ultimately lead to kidney failure. All right, there's a few important things I really want you to know about the MMRV vaccine. Current MMR vaccines contain levels of measles, mumps, and rubella viruses that are significantly higher than the levels that were safety tested in the MMR vaccine approved by the FDA in 1978. The current formulation of the MMR vaccine, including the one in the MMRV vaccine, has never been appropriately tested for safety, and we don't know the actual amount of live measles, mumps, and rubella viruses that are in each dose of the current MMR vaccine formulations. As said before, there's 60% more mumps component and 624% more varicella zoster component in the MMRV vaccine than in the MMR plus varicella vaccines. This may give an account as to why there are so many more febrile seizures with ProQuad than with the MMR and varicella vaccines given separately. So here's a few things I want you to think about. The vaccines that comprise ProQuad have been credited with preventing millions of deaths in the US since they were initially introduced. But let's look at a few facts first. For measles deaths in the US had been on a rapid decline before 1920, and they were pretty low by the early 1950s. The MMR vaccine wasn't approved in the US until 1971, and by then, measles deaths were very sparse. Only 1 in 93,000 measles cases of people with normal levels of vitamin A result in permanent disability or death. And many people attribute the drop in measles deaths to better sanitation practices, better nutrition, access to clean water, and access to appropriate medical care, like antibiotics if they have complications with the virus. When we look at the mumps infection, the risk of dying or permanent disability from mumps was extremely low before the mumps vaccination program in the late 1960s. The mortality risk of mumps is 1 in 93,000. The risk of permanent hearing impairment is 1 in 360,000. And the risk of fertility impairment in males is 1 in 290,000. Immunity from the mumps vaccine also wanes. So 25% of kids lose their immunity from the vaccine before they're even 15 years old. And 50% lose their immunity by the time they're in their mid-20s. When looking at rubella, before the rubella vaccine was approved in 1969, the mortality risk from rubella was 1 in 210,000 if contracted after birth. Risk of an unborn child contracting CRS from rubella infection that was fatal or caused permanent disability was 1 in 29,000, or 0.0035%. Now, 1 in 3 children lose rubella immunity from the vaccine within 15 years. And this is typically before most women become pregnant and even have a child. Now, when we look at chickenpox, about 1 in 40,000 cases of varicella or chickenpox were fatal before the vaccine was introduced in 1995. The fatalities usually occur in adults over 20 years old. And the CDC states that it's not known how long a vaccinated person is protected against varicella. Keep in mind that all of the infections that ProQuad is intended to protect against are self-limiting. They're generally mild infections, especially if contracted after birth and during childhood. Before the vaccine started circulating, over 90% of all of these infections were contracted before the age of 20 years old. And most measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox infections are benign or asymptomatic and are never even reported to the health department. Complications from all of these infections are very rare, especially if the infections are contracted by children after birth who have normal vitamin A levels. And once a child contracts the wild-type virus for any of these infections, they have lifelong immunity. The vaccine doesn't guarantee that. So many people assume that receiving the ProQuad or another MMR vaccine plus varicella vaccine is safer than getting measles, mumps, rubella, or chickenpox infections. But when we look at the packaging insert for ProQuad, we find some serious red flags regarding the safety and research behind the vaccine. The risk of serious adverse events after receiving ProQuad is very concerning. And with only a small percentage of adverse events from ProQuad being reported to VAERS, vaccine injury surveillance is extremely limited. We don't know if the vaccine causes cancer, genetic mutations, or fertility issues down the road. We don't know the long-term effects and health outcomes of ProQuad because the clinical trials only follow the subjects for a very short amount of time. And the current MMR formulation of the vaccine hasn't even been safety tested. So if you're considering the ProQuad vaccine for your child, there is a lot to assess and to look at. I really encourage you to take the time to explore the resources and the references we provided in the show notes and on the CHD website. Please be sure to conduct your own research if you're considering ProQuad or any other vaccine, and weigh the risks and the benefits so you can be sure that you are making good, informed decisions and the right choices for yourself and for your family. Thank you for watching, and until next time, this is Vaccine of the Week.
Now this is the boy. Hi.
We'll just call him M.
And this is another handsome boy. Hi.
We'll call him L.
Are you boys going to go and play outside while we do the story?
Yes.
Everyone just wanted to meet you because you're so handsome.
I have two boys, a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. My 13-year-old had, was vaccinated at birth with Hep B. That's actually the one vaccine that I did not want him to get.
So you were pro-vaccine before, apart from Hep B?
I was totally pro-vaccine, totally on board, but Hep B I'd read up on and said, he's not at risk. I'm not Hep B positive. There's no reason for my son to have this vaccine. So I put that in my birth plan and told the doctors and nurses. It turns out that when he was taken for his baby pictures, hospital pictures that I'd agreed to, they gave him that Hep B shot. So, and it turns out that he's allergic to yeast, and yeast is an ingredient in the Hep B shot. So I don't know which one came first, if he developed an allergy because of the Hep B, or if he had the allergy and then the Hep B exacerbated his problems. But he was never, developmentally, he was always behind. He had trouble. He'd pick up a little toy and just drop it immediately. It wasn't until my younger son was born that I noticed the extreme difference developmentally between the two. Like, things that my oldest could not do at all, my youngest was doing with ease, no problem whatsoever. I'd tell my youngest, go grab some diapers, and he'd take the whole thing of diapers and just drag it up the stairs for me. These are things my older son would never do. I continued vaccinating my oldest because I just had no clue, it was what the doctor said to do, so I kept vaccinating. Around 12 months, he had a round of shots, and within about 2 weeks or so, he was in the ER having febrile seizures. So for us, that was like, okay, we're done. This is the end of our vaccinating period. At that point, I had figured out that it just was not safe for him. Something about our family, just wasn't safe for us. My sister, who you met, her son, had seizures immediately after his vaccines. It's obvious that there's something about our family. Now, I do carry the MTHFR gene mutation, and I feel that that's what's at play here. But I didn't know that at the time. My oldest, he developed, vocal and physical tics, grunting, eye blinking, throat clearing, just like shoulder shrugs, eczema, like all over his body, like his wrists, his knees, all his joints, and malabsorption, which is he wasn't getting nutrients from the food that he was eating. He was having really pale, bowel movements. Just no nutrition was getting through to him. We decided to do an extreme diet change. I got some IgG allergy tests done, and it turns out that he was allergic to or sensitive to over 40 different foods, about 43 different foods. Once we eliminated all those foods, he slowly got better. He is still on the autism spectrum today, but he's a completely different child. We were dealing with headbanging, self-harming, biting, scratching. We could not leave him alone with his brother for more than a few seconds because he would just be scratched from head to toe. Meltdowns continuously throughout the day. All of that has gone away. We get maybe a meltdown every week or so, whereas it was nonstop throughout the day before changing his diet. So I guess that would be my advice is, get screened for the MTHFR gene mutation. You don't need to be vaccinated. You can take care of your body without vaccines. I think that vaccines are damaging, and certainly for some people, they are extremely damaging.
And we're not saying that all vaccines cause autism, are we? Because do you want to talk about your other son?
Absolutely not. It's not just vaccines. Vaccines are just one of many triggers that can cause autism. My younger son, he has PDD-NOS, which is like mild autism. He's on the autism spectrum. He was developing typically, totally normally. In fact, it was very easy to see the difference between him and his brother just through his motor skills. Like, oh wow, there's a real problem with my older son because look at what my younger son is doing that he never did. But then around 1 year old, he had an upper respiratory infection, and we gave him penicillin. He had a head to toe rash from it, full body reaction, and regressed from that moment. He was very challenging behaviorally, and motor skills, just slid down. So I feel that it's a combination of things. For us, we have this genetic issue, and then vaccines triggered the issues for my older son. Antibiotics were what triggered the issues for my younger son. So
Wow, thank
it's
you.
not just vaccines.
And just some advice to the person who doesn't understand, who thinks this is all a load of baloney.
Oh, well, they're going to say, oh, look, see, her other son has autism.
Yeah.
It's all genetic. But it's such a complicated combination of factors.
But you're the mother, and you're telling the story, so you know what happened to your child. And if your child was fine and then had this infection at 1 and then changed,
but somehow, I'm lying.
But there
I
can't
just
be
made it up.
millions of us lying
Exactly.
worldwide.
How is it possible that there are so many people with the same story? They're seeing it unfold in front of their eyes, and I just feel very sad that I continue to vaccinate my older son, because in retrospect, looking back, I could see the things happening to him, the eczema developing, the febrile seizures. It was easy to see in retrospect what was happening by just looking at his records, looking at his medical records, and noticing things like that he went in because he was sick, and then the doctor gave him a set of shots while he was sick. That's not supposed to happen. I think a lot of this vaccine injury could be eliminated simply by doing a better job of screening and not vaccinating when a child is sick at all, and less shots. If you're going to do it, less shots.
Thank you so much. You said it with real passion and meaning, and we really appreciate that. So have you signed your...
No, I'd love to sign the
Also,
best.
Johnny Awesome's out there with a pen.
Okay.
So do you know who Johnny Awesome is?
I'm sure I'll find him. I think he's got a back shirt on.
He's got a very loud voice. Anyway, and he'll know what number it is on, so go ahead and sign the bus, and thank you. Everybody said you're wonderful. They love you. Alrighty. Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.